you like the wind blowing through your hair. Well, come on, roll with me till the sun goes down. Texas sun. Say you wanna hit the highway while the engine roars. Well, come on, roll with me till the sun goes down. The Texas sun, oh yeah. Texas sun, caressing you from Fort Worth to Amarillo. Well, come on, roll with me till the sun dips low. Texas sun, Texas sun, oh girl. Texas sun. When I'm far from home and them cold winds blow, stuck out somewhere, folks I don't know. 'Cause you keep me nice and you keep me warm. Wanna feel you on me, can't wait to get back there again. Texas sun. Texas sun. Texas sun. Texas sun. You say you like the wind blowing through your hair. Well, come on, roll with me till the sun goes down. Texas sun. Texas sun. Oh baby, you're so gorgeous. How about you and me? Take a little trip. In the big body. Take a ride with me, babe. You by my side. How does it sound? You and I. Oh girl. Take a ride with me, babe. You by my side. How does it sound? You and I. Baby.
Come on with your hand, let me take you to the land where we all can dance, start a beautiful romance. The rhythm of the waves will guide you on your way back home, back to Mother Earth, back to where we all belong. With child from the start, I pray for the wildest hearts. Let it go, let it go, let it flow. Free your soul, there is no tomorrow. Let it go, let it go, let it flow. Free your soul, there is no tomorrow. Come on, little girl, I know that you are feeling low. Know that you are feeling low. The world is so much weight and everybody wants wants control. You better keep holding on, you know you've got a story to say. Lose sight of the shore, it's time to unbreak your wings. Indigo, the color you adore. Deep inside you know what you are here for. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Free your soul. There's no tomorrow. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Free your soul. There's no tomorrow. You only find that in your life. There's no tomorrow. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Free your soul. There's no tomorrow. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Free your soul. There's no tomorrow.
Take my money as I'm going. All this time appears to show you need it more than I do now. I'm writing down the outline, finding clues in daylight. I know it starts all over now. There is more to the story, but I don't know what it is. I recognize the story, but there is something that I miss. Leave the table when you're done. Past the door you start to run. I need you more than I did then. I wrote the story backwards. It didn't answer question. Can you tell me what I meant? There is more to the story, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome. It's interesting to see how difficult it is to get you back into the room, but I think that's a good sign because you're all interacting and talking to each other. This next session are selected abstracts. We call it rapid fire presentations, short presentations from a good number of speakers. And this session is going to be led by Katia Verhamme from the Department of Medical Informatics. Katia, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. So we're going to have 9 presentations. One person who had been, or one abstract who had been selected couldn't join, unfortunately. So short presentations, 5 minutes. I'm going to introduce everyone, and there won't be time to ask questions. But if you have specific questions, the number of the poster is listed on the presentation. Then I would advise you that you see the people while we have the break, while you can visit posters. So we will start with Alex Knight. Alex is a project manager from Data Standards at Health Data Research UK. was previously a principal scientist at UK's National Physical Laboratory, leading research in biophysics. Alex?
Great. Thank you very much, Katia, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about our work. So, my job as project manager for data standards is to promote and support the use of OMOP, among other standards in the UK. So I'd like to talk a bit about the landscape and what's going on with OMOP adoption in the UK. So the UK National Health Service has detailed health data on 67 million people cradle to grave, at least in theory. So, you know, potentially a goldmine for research. But as the diagram on the right-hand side of the slide there shows, is a really complex network of data flows from the bottom to the top. And it's really difficult to access this data and to use it for research. One of the initiatives that's going on in this space is that the NHS England is establishing a network of secure data environments or trusted research environments to support research, and that network has agreed to adopt the OMOP CDM as a common standard, so it's a really exciting development in the UK. And Wales and Scotland, I should say, already have their own secure data environments. So Health Data Research UK, where I work, is the UK's National Institute for Health Data Science. And one of the things we do is we convene the Health Data Research Alliance, which includes over 100 of the leading healthcare and research organisations in the UK. And it's really all about promoting best practice for ethical use of data in research. So we're doing a number of activities in support of OMOP adoption. So one of those is that we're very proud and happy to be collaborating with Eden. As Renske mentioned, you know, the UK is sort of not in Europe, but sort of is. And so we've funded 5 Eden data partners in the last call to transform their data to OMOPs, and I've had the pleasure of working with those data partners on their projects. We're also very happy to partner with OHDSI UK, as Danny mentioned in his presentation, and the real-world evidence network that Danny mentioned is a new development and was actually too late to put on these slides. So that's something else exciting that's going on. We're working with the NHS England secure data environments to support their adoption of OMOP. Something I'll show on the next couple of slides is a survey we did of the OMOP landscape in the UK, so trying to figure out what was going on already, what OMOP data was out there and what it was being used for. And we also do a number of community activities, including some OMOP-specific online events. And another thing I wanted to mention is something called the Health Data Research Innovation Gateway, which is a sort of single front door for metadata on UK data sets. Now, they're not all in OMOP, unfortunately, but many of them are. And that's something that's well worth a look at if you're interested in accessing UK health data. So briefly, some results from the survey. There's more of this on the poster. So we were able to identify 42 organisations across the UK who had OMOP data sets. There were 81 data assets. So those are either assets that are existing or where mapping projects underway. This is almost certainly not the full picture, but that's what we know about. So if anybody knows about any more, please let me know. And as you'd expect, across the whole UK, that spans the whole range of data types. I've used the Eden sort of classification here, going from primary and secondary care to cohorts, biobanks, and registries, and lots of interesting, really rich data sets out there. So my conclusions are there's a lot of momentum behind OMOP adoption in the UK. It's very hard to actually manage the number of people who are interested in joining all the meetings that we in OHDSI UK have organised. But there's still significant barriers and limitations, which I don't really have time to go into, but I'm sure you all know what they are. So our next steps include working to improve research and analyst skills and capabilities, to identify use cases and priority research needs. And one of the things we're looking at is a minimum viable OMOP data set for example, for use for the secure data environments. And also there are these national data collections which potentially are easier to work with mapping than the original like source level data. But also GP data, so primary care data, is a real untapped resource. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Next speaker is Tina Parciak. She's part of the research group of biomedical data sciences at the University Hasselt, Belgium. And within her PhD, she's developing and orchestrating strategies for the harmonization of real-world multiple sclerosis data coming from registries and cohorts.
Thank you. Yeah, sometimes I like to do things differently, like presenting in front of a stage instead of top of it. And sometimes I like to investigate if we can map multiple sclerosis registry data to the OMOP data model. And that's what we did. Multiple sclerosis is a very complex, chronic, lifelong disease that accumulates a lot of data across a patient's life. Clinical data, patient-reported data, MRI data, treatment data, procedure data, whatever. And for that, we have dedicated MS registries in a landscape that is quite broad. And they can collect all that real-world data in MS in those registries. And through, for example, minimal data sets or core data sets, they can collaborate within the MS community to generate real-world evidence. But I thought, what would happen if we would tap into other data sources like EHR that has nothing to do with multiple sclerosis and try to find out the insights we can gain from that? And that's why I thought, let's try OMOP Common Data Model. And we did that with 2 piloting MS data sets in the context of the EDEN project a couple of years ago already. And what we've learned, I will shortly present as a highlight. Surprisingly, MS registry data, or registry data in general, is different from EHR data. So that's the first learning we had. They collect data differently, longitudinally, retrospective, prospectively, across years and decades of a patient's life. And it's just different. They also often have a lack of use of medical standards, of terminologies, which also makes it difficult to map it to the OMOP Common Data Model. They also have free text fields, but I think that also happens in EHR data. So the OMOP Common Data Model, of course, cannot accommodate all of the concepts that MS registry data needs. For example, a relapse, temporarily worsening of the disease, comes with a lot of parameters, like the beginning, the severity, the outcome of a relapse, was it treated or not? And this we couldn't really put into OMOP concepts in the structure. Also, we have a lot of data that comes without granular information, like the start and end dates. And we all had to put conditions like symptoms or comorbidities into the observation table because we just didn't have the granular information. So that was, yeah, a bit of a hiccup. We also learned that even though we have the same standardization guidelines with the OMOP Common Data Model, in the end we had different databases because, yeah, they didn't really did the same, although I was involved in both projects. So we learned that we need to guide that a bit more. And we wanted, because we didn't do it back then, but we want to do it, to suggest maybe to have mapping guidelines for MS in this case, to really say these are the variables, the core variables that we need, these are the expected values that we have, and this is the concept and the domain that we propose for that variable. We also learned that the exchange of experiences and of the challenges in transforming registry data to the OMOP Common Data Model is very helpful, if not necessary. And that's why we initiated the registry work group, where we heard from a lot of registries from different domains, mainly cancer, but from different domains who shared their challenges in transforming that data. And we've learned that a lot of the challenges were similar across the domains. For example, that we have in registry survey data, patient-reported data, so question-answer pairs that is difficult to map to OMOP common data model. We have always the question of defining an observation period. What is it, and when does it start, when does it end? We have a lot of concepts that are not included in the OMOP common data model because, yeah, not standardized source concepts and all of that. So that's why it was so insightful to learn about that. And the last thing is not really surprising, and anyone who's ever done a transformation to the OMOP common data model knows that it takes a lot of time and a lot of expertise and interdisciplinary work to get data mapped to OMOP common data model. And of course, we want to have like a universal transformation tool that can speed up harmonization, but it's difficult, or to say at least impossible. And that's why we want to have it for the MS rebirth data, and we are in the process of developing a transformation tool that works on top of an MS core data set, where the data partners have to map to that core data set because they can map easily to a data dictionary, but not to the OMOP common data model. And the tool automatically transforms from that core data set to the OMOP common data model. And we hope to, this way, to get more MS registry data into the community of OHDSI. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Next speaker is Tom Seinen, a colleague of mine at Department of Medical Informatics, a PhD student, and his PhD is on clinical natural language processing and text mining. Tom?
Great, yes. Katia, thank you for that kind introduction. I will give you a short introduction of the research we have been doing on actually validating Dutch concept extraction tools using translated English corpora. And to start with clinical concept extraction. With clinical concept extraction, we want to, from medical text, we want to extract clinical information in the form of standardized concepts. And it happens actually in two different ways. We first want to find, okay, what parts of the sentence are the clinical entities, so disorders, persons, etc. So it's the named entity recognition. And then we want to link these phrases to a standardized vocabulary, UMLS, the OMOP vocabulary, SNOMED, you name it. And when you have this information, then you can use that for further analyses, prediction, etc., characterization. Well, for English, there are many tools to do this. So you have CTAGS, MedTagger, MedCat, Quick UMLS, and a lot more. However, for many European languages, and also Dutch, there are not that many tools. So even only recently, UMC Utrecht has created a translation of MedCat, and we at the Erasmus Medical Center, we created a translation of MedSpacie. However, we still don't really know how good these extraction tools are. So how well can we extract or recognize these clinical concepts, and how well can we link them to the vocabulary? Which is a very important question, because we want to know how reliable is the tool and how good is the quality of the extracted data. So to answer this question, we need a ground truth, right? So we need sample texts with manually annotated concepts, which we can then use to evaluate the tool, just to see, does it extract exactly the concept that we want, and does it also know where it is on the right locations. So again, for English, this is very, very easy, because there's many large English corpora available, publicly available, such as MedMentions, the shared CLEV, and the I2B2 datasets. However, again, for many European languages, and also Dutch, we don't have this large corpora. And, of course, creating one is actually quite difficult. It's very labor-intensive. It needs a lot of annotation to be done. And, of course, if you want to do this based on actual patient data, you have to take into account the whole sensitivity of the data. So why don't we just use what's already there? Why don't we just use the English text and just translate that to English? Well, then we introduce another problem, because between different languages, you have different language structures, and different sentence structures. So if you make a translation, words just move, words are being combined, words sometimes are just completely removed, etc. So you lose this location of where the clinical entities are. So to solve this, you can either just manually, again, realign it, or use another model to do this, which will be a language-dependent model, so you need to know the rules of this language. So then we thought, okay, can we not use this, solve this in a different way? So we came up with embedding the data or the information from the clinical concepts directly into the text to make the translation service or machine translation take care of the whole preservation of the location of these clinical entities. And that actually worked pretty well. So we just took the information, put it into brackets with also the clinical or the concept unique identifier in there, and we're just putting it through many different translation software. It actually just kept this, it just preserved this information. Very useful. The only thing that we didn't have to do was remove these patterns again, and you have, again, the separate data of the text and then the clinical concepts. And the nice thing is that this is now language independent. You only need, the translation needs to serve the two languages that you want. To do this, we actually compared two different types of translations. So we used the Google Cloud API, Translate API, and OpenAI's GPT-4. Both different kinds of models, a dedicated translation model versus a state-of-the-art text generation, generative model. The Google is actually very easy to use, out of the box, works very fast. And of course, you all know with GPT, you need to ask right questions, need the right prompting, and it's a bit slower to generate the text. But that also allows for endless optimization possibilities, which of course Google Cloud doesn't do. There's one model, no tweaking, take it or leave it. And we also compared, okay, how well do they preserve these entities, this formatting? And there we saw that also that Google had a bit more mistakes in keeping these entities in there. So it sometimes dropped these brackets, which GPT didn't do. However, GPT sometimes decided just to completely ignore a few annotations. It was a bit of a shame, while Google actually was quite good in keeping those. But overall, the numbers of missed annotations or formatting errors was quite low, and there was a very large agreement between translations. So they almost translated the text in the same way. So having these translations, we could actually do the experiments. So we had two extraction tools, 3 different English corpora that we translated, and we actually found a good overall performance of both the tools in the different languages. And the good thing is that we almost found no significant difference between the English and the Dutch translations. So to conclude, we generated Dutch annotated corpora and evaluated Dutch clinical extraction tools with it. And we used a method without any manual annotations. And of course, it's completely model agnostic. So if you want more information or want to know about the limitations, please come to my poster, 112. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And indeed, if people have questions after the presentations, come to the posters. Next speaker is Bernardo Neves, but I haven't. Okay. Hi, Bernardo. You graduated in medicine from University Nova de Lisbon, and you specialized in internal medicine, and you're now doing a PhD in biomedical engineering. I hope I'm correct. Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity of being here. So the work me and my team bring today concerns multimorbidity, which is a common clinical problem nowadays, people getting older and having more chronic conditions. And if you want to do any kind of clinical research on this problem, we must first start to correctly identify those patients, in this case in the electronic health records. So the typical approach, as most of you know, relies on finding condition codes, but we all have a sense that some cases might be missed, and there are other data types that might actually identify some of these conditions. The problem with using other types of data, such as laboratory results, prescriptions, or procedures, is that it might be hard to actually validate those codes for actually point to a condition. So we seek this project, and based on prior work of members of this community, relying on weekly supervised learning to actually validate the proposed dictionary of rules to identify patients with chronic conditions, and therefore that's what we present here today. So we started to define with a group of clinical experts a number of conditions of interest, about 40. Okay. Okay, the problem got... I hope we don't need to leave. Okay.
We did that on purpose to get people. Oh, it's my mobile phone. And then even this. Sorry. Sorry.
Can I continue?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well.
I think Bernardo wants to continue. So yeah.
So I might keep this short. So, so what we did actually was to define a specific cohort. It was patients that have several condition codes, and define controls that were patients that have any of the rules that point to this condition. By having these two groups, we trained the model with the logistic regression that would then provide us the individual probability of having a given condition on the overall population. And by using this weight, we were able to confronting this probability with the observed fact of having the condition with our rules, and therefore calculate true and false positive and negative values. So this is what we got in this population of more than 800 adult patients. We saw that most of the patients were identified by a single type of data, most of them of course with conditions, but there are a significant part of patients that would only be identified by having these additional diagnosis codes. About an increase of about 57% of diagnosis could be made by using these additional data attributes. So not only we could find more patients, but we actually tried to validate this approach, like I said, and we use this metric F1 score that is a mean between the sensitivity and the positive, the predictive value. And actually what we found was that overall balance between more sensitivity and less positive predictive values was actually in favor of using this approach of relying on these phenotyping rules. So we could both increase the number of patients we could identify and actually try to measure how bad or how good were we actually doing this. So by using this approach to validate phenotyping rules, we seek to find much more patients with chronic conditions that we would have if we only relied on condition codes, and we were able to measure and calculate the additional benefit of using these other data sources. Future improvements include integrating alternative data sources such as clinical tests, since we all believe that that will really enhance both the precision and recall of the phenotyping rules in this problem. Thank you for your attention. I'll be glad to discuss this with you in the poster.
Thank you, Bernardo, and a nice example of the importance of using additional data like measurements to optimize identification of diseases. Next speaker is João Almeida. He's assistant professor from the University of Aveiro, Portugal. And João also informed me that you had been part of the team who developed the Eden catalog.
Hello, everyone. I'm João Almeida from the University of Aveiro, and I am the one that did some parts of the Eden portal, namely the Eden catalog and the Eden network dashboards. Why this is important? Because both of these tools contributed to this work. And let me tell you a story before presenting the work. Almost everyone here knows, I think everyone here knows OMOP CDM. and how to do a study, and imagining a scenario in which you have a very nice idea, but you don't have data, and you need to find the data. And your study is nice, but you don't know which type of data is available, you don't know who should you contact to have access to the database, and you neither know which database should you try to contact. And with the great adoption of OMOP CDM, we have a lot of databases to explore, which is a great thing, but we don't know which database we should contact. So in the Eden portal, we created something that allows the data custodian, a data owner, to publish some information about the database. In the top, we create like an entry in the database catalog. We publish the information, like the contact, the technology behind the database, and some meta information. But in the bottom, we have a different pipeline in which data owner can extract meta information from the database. It's a tool similar to Achilles. I think great part of you knows Achilles, but it's a tool that does not expose so many information as Achilles, and then this can be used to create a network dashboard. This network dashboard can allow you to compare databases and see which one is the most appropriate for a study. The problem is with increasing network of databases, 200 I think, in the Eden, we have a problem in in finding the right database for a study, and the search become complex. So we have an idea. The idea was, well, everyone knows what is a chatbot. Patrick showed everyone in the beginning. So why we don't use the chatbot technology to help a researcher find the best database, and also to help the researcher conducting a study? The idea of this chatbot is to know the information that's available on the Eden network dashboards, that is aggregation of statistics about databases, and then itself can compare in the background and find the best database for your question. So instead of you make a question to nowhere, you can ask the bot, and I have an idea to do a study about COVID, for instance, and the chatbot will look for the databases available and try to provide you the most suitable for that study, or at least the top 5 or top 3. We did this using information retrieval models and large language models to help have a nice conversation. And as a feature direction, we already did some work on this, and we have this to present you, but we are trying to put our chatbot communicated with Atlas, so we can think in the study, find the databases, and then build the cohort definition on everything on a chatbot. If you want to know more about this, please visit our poster, and I would love to see your suggestions for this chatbot. Thank you.
Thank you, João. Next speaker is Cesar Barboza Gutierrez, colleague of me as well at the Department of Medical Informatics. You're a software developer and data scientist, and you have a data analysis background, and you're an expert in data, and you also are an economics journalist.
Hi, good afternoon. It's great to be here. I want to talk about this project, Report Generator. It's one of the ongoing projects that we have been developing here at Erasmus MC here in Rotterdam. And to understand why we found the need to create a tool to automate scientific reports, it would be a good idea to give you some context about the Darwin project. As some of you may already know, Darwin EU is a very ambitious project that aims to provide real-world evidence. It analyzes data from around 40 European data partners. That means like it's almost 130 million patients contributing with data. However, and more relevant to Report Generator is that Darwin plans to deliver around 140 studies by next year. So it's a lot of reports. Well, most of them are what we call off-the-shelf studies, which are designed to be more straightforward, have a generic protocol, and mainly deal with characterization questions. But many studies differ significantly depending on the diseases or drugs to be analyzed. Plus, at Darwin, well, we're currently working with at least 5 R packages that were developed here at Darwin also to analyze things like incidence, prevalence, treatment pathways, do survival analysis. So the goal is that a report generator can eventually produce the report that has to be delivered to the European Medicines Agency with a standard report, a standard format. Well, for each study, well, of course, somebody has to create a report and also an interactive visualization dashboard. So that's where the complexity arises. I also work as a data scientist here at Darwin, developing packages for some of the studies. So yes, it is essential to have like a tool that first helps our principal investigators involved in the study to create tables and figures for the report. But second, to have like also a tool for the programmers to generate the Shiny app for each project, because they are like off-the-shelf studies, so we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel every time that we are like constructing a Shiny app that we have to deliver. All of this is with the objective to substantially reduce the time required to complete making a study and help to reach the goal in the future of making tens of these type of analyses in a relatively short of time. So what is the approach to solve this challenge? Currently, well, the developers at Darwin, they have developed these analytical packages that allows to get like a summarized result for all the output in the analytical packages. So we're transitioning to have this standard output format. And with this common format, it is easier to organize and bind the results from multiple data partners, regardless the objectives and regardless the output that we're getting from each of the data partners. This is particularly useful for report generator because the result table will contain all the relevant information needed for the report. Another strategy that we have been following is that now each analytical package provides its own functions for tables and figures that later on report generator like uses as functions to generate the visualizations in the dashboard, and also then we use the app to generate an automated Word report. Here in the slide, we're seeing an example of a table produced by one of the Darwin packages, cohort characteristics. And as you can see, the summarized result format organizes very well the data with its own strata, variables, estimates. So we have like this room of flexibility to get like really fast insights about the data, but still respecting a standard format. However, there's still a lot of complexity to manage. Here I would like to quickly illustrate that, for instance, how the functionality of report generator works. First, we load the results from the main analytical packages into report generator in either CSV or zip format. And from there, report generator classifies each result and organizes the data from multiple data partners in an interactive menu. From there, the user can cherry pick some of the results or all of them, depending on the study. After that selection of items, the user can preview everything in a visualization dashboard. And this is the place where an investigator can explore the data, get some useful insights, and if they find a useful insight, they can just add that insight to a list that then is going to be used, as we can see, well, we have a table or a graph here, and then the user that add those report items to the next section. And the next section, the user can either create a Word report that it's already formatted with all the tables and figures, or create a Shiny app that it will be basically a copy of the dashboard, but that it's only showing the results. Well, the next step, we have to complete this. For the next steps, we have to complete this integration with summarized result, with the summarized result format, and also like keep adding functionality and making it more interactive, so we can really customize a Shiny app for every study and provide enough functionality to support results for all the studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cesar. You're working on a very important tool to facilitate the production of reports for all of us. Next, we have a presentation by two people, Clara Ust, I think, and Annelies Verbist. So you can come to the floor. Annelies Verbist is a medical oncologist at the Antwerp University Hospital in Belgium. She co-developed the framework of the Belgian university hospitals on the reuse of routine collected data and is co-lead of the OHDSI Belgium national node. And Clara Ust has a PhD in biochemistry, and her current research topics is on the value of real-world evidence in diverse therapeutic areas to foster AI-driven clinical research.
Thanks a lot. Last year, after the Congress, I thought it was the most fun and inspiring Congress I'd ever been to. So it's really great to be here again and feel all the energy and see how this is moving forward. So it's our pleasure to also share a bit of the work that we have been doing in Belgium with what we would call the Oncology Research Group, which is actually a handful of Belgian hospitals who have been grateful to receive an Eden grant a while ago. And together with the SME Linkscare, we have mapped the data of our cancer patients to the common data model. Ever since, we become friends and we now do studies together. And with together, I mean the clinicians and the data managers from the hospital, the technical people from Linkscare, which is why we're doing the presentation together, and sometimes people from pharma also interested to get some insights. And this also means that a large part of this journey has actually been getting to talk the same language and making sure that by using the same words, we also mean the same things, which has been challenging and extremely instructive and enriching. And it has, after all, allowed us to really go from the raw hospital data to ethical committee approvals, ETL mapping, protocol writing, phenotyping, analytics, with more or less the same group of people who have all learned a lot from this effort. What it basically looks like is that Linkscare goes in with us, with the hospitals. They map our structured data to common data model, which means diagnosis, labs, and so on. They run their NLP algorithm on our clinical nodes to get out things like performance status. And that gives us a bunch of data in a data warehouse that is sitting there more or less ready. But when we want to really answer a question, that's where we get together. We write a protocol, and we, from the hospital side, we define the clinical ideas that we want to work with to answer that question, like a lung cancer patient or a tumor with PD-L1 expression. And then we think of how those ideas are represented in our raw data. Is it in free text, a percentage somewhere, something like that? We validate the mappings of those data to the common data model. And then with those OMOP codes, we start defining some rules to get to phenotypes that really capture the clinical ideas that we want to represent. And as a proof of the pudding, then we get, from a hospital side, we would get a statistical report from Linkscare, which says, for an example, you've got so many lung cancer patients in your service, so many have metastatic disease, so many have PD-L1 expression, and so on. And for us, it's really easy to see whether that makes sense or not. And if it doesn't, we can go back and see where we would need to adjust and reiterate. And through this process, we finally end up with a data set that we can both trust and use. And this is, Clara has illustrated very beautifully how this would look like in all the hospitals. We look at all the different cancer types, all the different immune checkpoint inhibitors in this case, because the first use case for us was immuno-oncology, and then we start adding building blocks like, okay, what's in the first event, what's a treatment regimen, for an example. We got an extra slide on that one. Because it's super important to make sure what are the treatment lines of your patient, but it's really difficult to get that from the raw data. Fortunately, last year we learned here that there was something like the OHDSI OncoRegimen Finder, on which Linkscare have more or less based themselves to come up with a set of rules to call a regimen. Did this work perfectly? I think about 85% accurate on our data, which, yeah, it was like not good enough to use as such, but it really enabled us to call regimens, because then we would in the clinic receive a summary of the regimens that were called. And for me, for an example, if I would go through all the different possible regimens for kidney cancer in only 1 hour, I could say that's a regimen, that's an oops, and complete what would otherwise have probably cost us a first-year PhD student. And only last evening I learned from Asia that apparently the regimen finder has undergone a huge revamp and it's become even more powerful, so I'm really excited to get to know that one. But anyway, this was one illustration of the several things that we are trying to add to the data set. It's very much a work in progress, but Clara will give you a sneak peek of what's already in there.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And we did want to showcase that this is definitely a project based on collaboration between different stakeholders. So just to give you a quick review of what we had as data sources, it was about 10 in 3 different hospitals for now. And so for this cohort that we're focusing on, which is lung cancer patients, there was a total of 730. Approximately 2/3 were male, with a median age of 67 years. And you can see here there's actually more than 8,000 ICI administrations detected. And when we took together all of these patients, we got a median overall survival of 22 months. Of course, this is without dividing them according to stage or metastatic status. So to go through a couple of the characteristics of the patients, we can see here that the smoking status was current smokers for almost half of the patients. Another 26% were former smokers. And then actually the smallest group was the never smokers. You can see we have approximately 18% of missingness for this variable. And then regarding metastatic status, of course, most patients did appear to have metastasis. And we had a missingness of about 17%. So then we went on to see what kind of treatments they were receiving, and according to the guidelines, this actually makes a lot of sense. Most patients were treated with pembrolizumab, followed by nivolumab, atezolizumab, and durvalumab. So one of the things that I think was a little bit more challenging was to actually get to see whether these treatments were being treated as a monotherapy, as a combination therapy, what line of therapy this was. Of course, like Annelies mentioned, the Onco regimen finder was very helpful for that. So we did realize that most patients were being treated in combination therapy for the first line. And you can see up here the performance status of the patients. Actually, most of them had a performance status of 1, which implies that they can't do strenuous activity, but they're overall ambulatory, so pretty much okay. And just as an example of the outcomes that we can get to, we can see here that the overall survival curves are definitely way worse for patients with very high performance status of 3, 4, who are not included in randomized clinical trials. So this is the sort of insight that we can get from real-world evidence that you can do with your typical studies. So just a couple of take-home messages. I would say 3 main ones. First of all, collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. We have to get to speak the same language. We all know that the teams involved to do this multidisciplinary approach they have a very different background, so we have to collaborate. Second of all, I think this study shows that you can do a comprehensive analysis from raw hospital data to the generation of OMOP databases to actually gain some insights, which will be published eventually, of course. And then third would be the fact that if you do use free text and NLP tools to get into that free text, you can definitely enrich the data set so that you can get insights into variables that otherwise would be untapped. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Clara and Annelies. Next speaker is Whitney Burton, a PhD student in the International Program in Biotech and Healthcare Management at Taipei Medical University College of Management.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for selecting this abstract for us to get a chance to share what we're doing, but also to please, please, please join us. There we go. So I'm going to be looking or discussing more the exploration of ovarian cancer therapy sequences, looking at treatment-naive women, specifically at a data based on Taiwan. So ovarian cancer is the 8th leading cancer for women globally, as well as for mortality. When we look at just gynecological cancers, we actually see that it is the highest mortality. Regionally, who's impacted is going to be European women, looking at Eastern Europe and Northern women, and then Southeastern Asian women. And even though the incidence rates are low globally, we do see some disparities of mortality rates, with lower and middle income countries having severely higher mortality rates. And this is across the board. Generally speaking, we see that women, and this is at least between 50 to 60%, are going to be diagnosed in 3rd or 4th stage, which is clearly going to impact survival overall. When we look at 10-year survival rates, unfortunately, we're looking at under 30%. And global treatment guidelines can to be very homogeneous, which is good, with debunking surgery happening first, followed by either intravenous or oral medications. So our study design and our question was really to characterize, using real-world data, the sequences of utilization patterns that we were seeing within our database. This aim comes from women asking questions. What are my outcome chances? What does this look like for me? What you're telling me to do, is this normal? And those are normal questions that we should expect from any patients that we see. But when we look at global information, where do these questions come from? We know that unfortunately in some populations, women based upon racial or ethnic demographics or political social situations may have been systematically excluded from healthcare or may have low healthcare literacy. For other areas, it's the fact that once you're diagnosed, you may have a great background in health literacy, but it goes out your mind because you're scared, and this is a new frame of life that you now need to readjust to. So being able to say, hey, actually, you're within, this percentile of women, this is the expectation, and we know this because we've done global studies or we've done regional, national studies, can be very securing and improve quality outcomes. And we know for cancer patients, confidence and quality is just as important as the medical. Our data set was from Taipei Medical University Clinical Research Database. Overall, it has about 3 million data points, which is really useful. Our population ended up being just under 1,200 women. We were treatment naive over a 12-year period. And then the tools we used, the host of OHDSI, a good mixture to make sure that we were really standardizing concepts when it came to identifying medications by ingredients and or regimens. And then when it came to our outcomes, we looked at specifically only 3 sequence pathways, and that's because once we got to the 3rd one, we were looking at around 300 women, and we didn't think going beyond that would be as impactful. Now, if you all join this study, right, we could go to 5 or 6 if needed. And for what we were looking at specifically, the 3 classes were chemotherapy, target therapy, and then hormone therapy with 13 subclasses of medications, which I will not list because they're right there. For our findings specifically, we found that even though there is really great guidelines and we expected most women to kind of have the same utilization pathways, that most of our women, just over 70%, actually had very unique pathways, and that was kind of due to cancer stage or different things like that. We found that we had a wider range in age in women than we were generally expecting. We did expect a younger population. We see within Asian subsets that the women tend to be diagnosed and acquire ovarian cancer a bit earlier. We had about 14% of women were actually between 20 to 34 years old. And then on the flip side, around almost 40% were 60 or above. When it came to looking at medications, chemotherapy as expected was the most common medication class used, but then we saw alkylating agents being the most common subclass within the medications. We saw that anti-estrogen agents were also highly utilized across the sequence pathways, although not as much in the 1st or 2nd. When we talk about the implementations, why this information is significant, is because we have guidelines and they're really important. However, guidelines, while giving a structure, don't always get into the conversations that patients may be having with their providers of saying, I want this medication because I've heard my aunt, my sister, my so forth is taking it and she's healthy or she's, vigorous. Or the fact that sometimes in medicine, we tend to follow what our teachers have taught us, and so you might get into one regimen over another consistently just out of comfort or because that's what you were taught, and so there might be some deviation from pathways. And so when we look at, here are the guidelines, but here's what we're actually seeing in real world use, that kind of juxtaposition we felt was really important. So we want to take the time to just acknowledge the team at Taipei Medical University, the support from the Taiwanese government, but then also the clinical partners from a couple of the APAC OHDSI, as far as making us think about how we should kind of restructure our protocols. Initially, I thought it was important to look at regimens, but they were like, actually, we have some limitations. Let's go instead and look at ingredients, which is why partnership, right, and getting information from people is super important during the developmental stage. So here's my call to you, because I want to make sure I stay within my time. We were told to sit with discomfort and that it's normal until it's too late. Then we're questioned about not being proactive. I won't be siloed or silenced any longer. I'm one person, I'm a solo data point. But if we come together, we can make a data set, and that set makes all the difference. It has the power to change fortunes and futures, from prediction models to improving quality of care. Let's make a representative data tapestry that reflects us and changes the narrative. Let's change the course of ovarian and gynecological cancers. And this is from a patient. It lets us know that women want to be involved in research, that they don't want to be overlooked, and they want their questions, no matter how based in fear they are, answered by us in the research field. So again, we represent 12% of the world's population. I'm sure some of your data sets have ovarian or gynecological cancer patients in it. Please come find me at poster 21. If you don't have a lot of patients in that set, it's okay, 50 people, I will take them. Thank you.
Thank you, Whitney, and thank you for showing that beautiful statement, showing the importance of what we're doing and for whom we're doing it. Last but not least, Katrin Manlik, I hope I pronounce it correctly. You're a computer scientist by training, and you worked for over 15 years in various analytical roles in pharmacovigilance.
Thank you for the introduction, Katia. Welcome everyone, and excited to be here and speak today on behalf of the Bayer team. And I'm presenting today about a multi-database retrospective cohort study on characterization and treatment pathways of patients with Alport syndrome on OMOP data sources from 3 different countries. First of all, what is Alport syndrome? So it's a rare genetic kidney disease which usually manifests in the early childhood. And the disease is characterized by mutations in the collagen genes, which leads then to a defective collagen production. So consequently, patients may present with hematuria, proteinuria, ocular abnormalities, hearing loss, a progressive loss at kidney function, leading then finally to kidney failure. And typically, patients get treated with ACE inhibitors, ARBs, or SGLT2 inhibitors to slow down the progression of the disease and then also delay the onset of the kidney failure. In our study, we wanted to characterize the patients diagnosed with Alport and how they are treated in a real-world setting across the different countries. On the methods, we are using 6 different OMOP data sources from 3 countries, US, UK, and Japan. From the US, we are using MarketScan and Optum claims and Optum EHR. From the UK, we are using 2 general practitioner databases, CPID Gold and Aurum. And from Japan, we are using RWD-Co, which has both electronic medical records and claims. We are including patients in the study which have at least one diagnosis code of Alport syndrome and an age between 1 and 40 years and requiring 1 year of continuous enrollment in the database. On the other hand, we are excluding all patients with a prior kidney failure because we are interested in the outcome of the kidney failure in our study. And in regards to comorbidities of interest, we are including hematuria, proteinuria, vision and hearing impairment, gastrointestinal symptoms, kidney disease, but also certain aspects of the family history of the patients because it is a hereditary disease. Then applying all these inclusion-exclusion criteria brought us to the following attrition table and helped us to bring together a study population with the biggest cohorts in the US, followed by UK, and a smaller cohort than in Japan. Coming to the results, we were able to identify 1,819 patients with Alport syndrome from these 6 databases across the 3 countries. And we found notable gender and regional differences in the patient characteristics. In regards to the demographics, there was a higher proportion of females in all databases except CPRD Gold, and the differences were appearing also in the age of diagnosis. Here in the US, patients were diagnosed with Alport around the age of 20. However, male patients were 7 to 10 years younger, so the diagnosis was much, much earlier than in women. In contrast to that, in the UK, patients were already diagnosed within their early teens, and in Japan, only around the age of 24. On the comorbidities, we found that hematuria, proteinuria, and kidney disease were common around the population. Arterial hypertension ranged from 5 to 44%. And again, the gender differences here, the hearing impairment was most prevalent in males more than in females across all databases, whereas in return, hematuria and kidney disease were more prevalent in females than in males in the US, which was our biggest patient population. Vision impairment was prevalent in up to a quarter of patients. Continuing on the results, we also assessed treatments typically used in the patients with Alport syndrome. And here, the treatment pathways look very consistent, very equal in the US and in the UK, and a bit different in Japan. So ACE inhibitors were the most frequently used first-line therapy in the US and the UK, with 3/4 of patients, and ARBs were the second most used frequently therapy in the US and the UK, with 1/4 of the patients, but it was most frequently used in Japan. The SGLT2 inhibitors we found were rarely used in the AS population, same as any combination therapies. Overall, we saw that the treatment uptake was low in the patient population, both before the diagnosis and also after the diagnosis. Only less than half of the patients were treated with a cardiorenal protective therapy after the diagnosis. What are our conclusions now? So first of all, that there are notable gender and regional differences in the patient characteristics of Alport syndrome. And this study brings new insights into the demographics, clinical characteristics, and treatment utilization, so that the knowledge on the disease can be expanded, and clinicians, healthcare providers have more information to, most importantly, improve the patient's quality of life. And finally, we found here by these, in this study, in this example, that OMOP data sources and OHDSI tools provided an excellent opportunity to gain insights into rare diseases across multiple geographies and healthcare settings in a standardized approach. What are our next steps now? So currently in the study, we are working on analyzing the trajectories of the kidney function measures like eGFR and UACR to understand the disease progression. We are working on cardiovascular and kidney composite outcomes along the follow-up period, and also analyzing healthcare resource utilization within the iPod patient population. Also, we are eager to expand the study to further databases, just adding another Japanese data source here. And data partners are very welcome to participate, joining this study, and this would be well in time now. We are just starting drafting manuscript with the results, so you can still join, run the analysis, and join the manuscript. Yeah. Thank you very much. Please find me at the poster, drop me an email. Thank you.
Catherine? Thank you, Catherine, for this nice presentation. So this brings us to the end. Thank you for the presenters. You had wonderful slides, good messages, and you stayed in time, so thank you for that. And thank you for the audiences, of course, to be patient. This is an overview of what's going to come. So we're going to have lunch. And we have the Collaborator showcase in La Fontaine and OHDSI room. And also don't forget the early investigator mentor meetings. That's at the Queen's Lounge at 2 o'clock. And then be back at 4 for further presentations. Thanks a lot.